All right. Well, there's a strange thing. My son turned up. His partner had just bought this clock. I thought the cabinet would make quite a nice little cabinet on its own without the clock in it. So he brought it along and I had a look and couldn't see anything wrong other than one small piece that was broken on the back. He said that it was in the bin for the cheap offers. So he picked up the clock, or she bought the clock, for £5. So if you're looking for a clock to restore, something like this, £5 is a good one, cheap enough to start with. It's a German-made clock, and you can identify German clocks by their frames. They're always cut out like that, saving on the amount of brass used. The migrants took the same pattern over to America, and over there they saved even more brass by not enclosing the springs. They took them right out of the barrels and they were loose. As you can see, it's ticking away. I mean, somebody's been pretty liberal with the oil, and I could pull it all to pieces, but as it's quite happily going like mad now, I don't see really the reason to clean it. You can see it nicely operates. Perfect working order. Note the fly at the top there, which is a governor, so that it can't go too fast. And this lever is just so that you can make it strike again if it's out of time, and you keep pulling that until the hands coincide with the number of beats. Now the only thing that was broken is the suspension here. It's a spring, piece of clock spring, and that hangs from there like so, and the pendulum itself hangs on that, and that's all that's wrong with the clock. It's stamped 46 centimetres, and I assume that's the length of the pendulum, which is quite nice. It's cleaned up quite well, and there's the hook on the top, and for once it came with a key. Well, at the moment that's on the back shelf, so let's get on with the job of assembling the clock. Well, I made a big mistake last time. I always assumed that acetone completely evaporated, but it doesn't. I ran a test afterwards, and you can see on this piece of glass here, with a couple of drops, it leaves behind this white powder, and that absolutely bunged up the platform. So I've had a terrible job to clean it, to get rid of it, and I hope it's now working okay, but not terribly happy with that. However, I have done all the ends of the wheels. They're all polished, except of course for this one. Well, this is by far the worst one. You can see the pinion is pitted with corrosion. It's as though it's been in water. It's completely rusted. And the little end, the bearing end, I've cleaned it as best I can, but it's shiny, but it's got a waste to it where it's worn in the middle. And if I take it down any thinner, then it's going to be so loose in the hole, it won't work. And this end hasn't been cleaned, and you can see the shank is rusty. It's going to take some cleaning. Whether this will stop it from working or not, I don't know. When we took it apart, the pieces, all the wheels and so on, were always this way up. And as they wobble in the holes, that's quite difficult to get it to put together. So we'll have to use it the other way round, and remember and use your photographs or drawings and so on to assemble it on the other plate, and then they'll all be standing this way up. So the first one to go in is going to be this one, and then goes the spring, and then the hour wheel in here. And so far things aren't too bad. There's an awful lean on this one, but of course this is the worst one. Well, everything's leaning, but there is an old saying that says, if it'll rattle, it'll go. Well, it's certainly going to rattle. Now, the next stage is to put this on the top, and this is going to take time. The longest one is okay, because that's going to be straight in the middle, like so. And that one's okay, so we're not too bad so far. But now it starts to get tricky, because they've dropped out of a line, and you've got to get them to fit in those holes. The only way to do it is to pick it up and to hold it between the finger and thumb, and with a pair of tweezers you have to shift the wheels around until they drop in, hopefully. And at this point I'll probably switch the camera off, because this could take some time, especially when the wheels drop out like that. Well, there it is. Didn't take me too long, but it's rather boring trying to watch somebody do that. And as you can see, everything is running quite freely, in spite of this being badly pitted. Well, hopeful. This piece on the back that I didn't take off is an adjuster for the depthing of this. It's got to be just right. These teeth are very fine, and it has to be a perfect fit. So at this stage, I think the best thing is to get some screws in here and get the back screwed on before it all falls to pieces again. I can get a couple in. It's such a fine slot in the screw. Right, but at least it won't fall to pieces now. One thing I haven't been able to do, and that's find a way of making a key. I've just completely stumped. I can make a key with my own tools, of course, but for somebody without the equipment, I can't think of a way of making one. However, at the moment, it projects far enough to be able to wind it. So I can do that with a pair of pliers at a pinch or a spanner at best. Right, well that's okay. That's as far as we've got so far. And the next thing now would be to fit the platform. Does help if you get it the right way round, of course. Right. Somewhere we've got some very small screws. And it does help if you've got a magnetic screwdriver. No, or it's borderline whether they go in. Right, well that's one in. Let's try a different approach. Now it seems to be a better method. Well, this screw just goes round and round, so the thread's gone on that one, but this one hasn't gone right down. Now it has. Right. Right, that completes that assembly. Well, if I can put some pressure on the wheel inside to replicate the spring, I just touch that. Well, that's promising. Right, so I'll now fit the springs that go on here. Next job is to fit the ratchet to wind the clock, and that's held in place with a pin. Needs squeezing in a bit. Well, this then goes in there, the click as it's called. And the spring goes there, holding it against the ratchet wheel, but fit that afterwards. This has got a small hole in it, the spring, which is supposed to have a pin, and the idea is that when you put the screw in there, it won't twist, but the pin is missing. It's a very, very fine one, and I don't think it's going to make much difference actually, so we'll see if we can get the screw in. I won't do it up too tight. That's it, so that now I can do this one. Right, that should be alright now, and it should just, ratchet works fine. Okay, now comes the actual gearing for the minute hand and the hour hand and so on. And first one on was that one on the centre, which was a bit stiff, and you've got to make sure it twists all right. It does. And the other one drops in that little hole, and the two now engage so that and then the other wheel goes on the top, and that engages with the little pinion there. So that's okay, and that needs supporting with this bracket that we took off, or I took off, and that just fits on there. It has two locating pins to fit in the two holes there. Oops. Sometimes the magnet's a nuisance. Right, one complete clock. Now in theory all I've got to do is wind it up. And I don't have any means at all of turning that. I don't have a key. I would have to make one, and I can't think of a way of making one without using my tools. So we'll give it a few turns using the pliers. It's a bit crude, but really it's just to see if we can get the clock to actually go. Now that should be enough. Now, just see if I can give it a kick start. So far, no. I'll give it a few more winds. Not so promising. Right. Try again. Not so keen. Let's see if I can. Right, well I'm going to have to play around with that for a little while, so I'll turn the camera off. Well, I've had a good fiddle with it, and with a little bit of pressure on one of the wheels inside, it ticks away quite happily. Fortunately, when it does, the tick isn't quite even. To my ear it sounds a little heavier one side than the other, and if it were an ordinary clock with an escapement, like an anchor escapement, and it was going tick-tock, then you'd know immediately it was out of beat and how to correct it. But how to correct that is probably via the hairspring, and I certainly don't have the knowledge or the skill to adjust the hairspring. However, it could also be that there's not enough power getting through the train, as since I don't have to apply much pressure, there may not be enough power coming from the spring because it's inefficient. Now, while I've polished all the ends of the pivots, that's fine, but I haven't been able to polish the holes in the plates. Now, if that's where the problem is, then the holes in the plate should be burnished. Now, I had hoped that the wood that we put in with the cocktail sticks would be enough to make it work, but this is a set of burnishers, and I can get the camera on them. They are just tapered steel rods, hardened steel, and you push them into the hole and you twizzle it to smooth the surface. Theory is when you replace the bush and so on, you drill the hole slightly undersize, and then you take one of these, which is a clock brooch. It's a 5-sided scraper which is tapered, and the theory is that you scrape one side and then from the other side until you've got a double taper and a high spot in the middle. And then you take the burnisher and you shine the high spot. Well, that's the theory anyway. Before I go down the road of trying to burnish the inside, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the platform, and then I'm going to let it run, and do that several times in the hope that the shiny ends to the pivots will act as burnishers and will burnish the holes in the plates. Well, we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. As you can see, I've taken it all to pieces again, and I've decided that I'm going to burnish the pivot holes. And for burnishing, I'm going to use ordinary sewing needles. I've got a couple of sizes here that seem to cover the smaller holes. One's a sewing needle, and the other's, the bigger one's a darning needle. And I'm going to have to hold them in pliers. It's the only way of gripping it. I suppose I could go to the trouble of trying to make some sort of handle, but I don't think it's worth it for the 2 or 3 holes that we're going to do. And insert it in the hole and just twist it. And do the same on the other side. And if there are any, or were any, bumps in there, then hopefully that will have smoothed them out, although I think they were pretty good anyway. Now, when it comes to the bigger holes, I obviously haven't got a needle or anything that's going to fit that, so the only way I could think of doing that is to take the biggest, or the bigger one, and this time hold it up tight against the pliers and just go round and round like that, pressing hard in all directions, and that should smooth out any bumps in the surface. And this one for the hour handles, that's also got a bigger hole, so I'll do the same for that as well. As you can see, the platform escapement is perfectly free, but the clock's not going, in spite of all the extra work. With a little help, I can get it to tick. And it'll go for a little while with help. And then it'll suddenly stop, even with help, and it won't go. I'm afraid the pinion inside, that very bad one, is just too bad. And this on the back is actually an adjuster which controls the depth of the wheel into that pinion. If I tighten it any more, it won't go at all, and if I slacken it, it just doesn't want to go, and if I slacken it, it will jump a tooth. So I'm afraid that's a fail. Right, we're off again, and then it'll come across another bad bit like that, and it suddenly stops. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. Even if I rebushed it and machined all the ends of the bearings to the correct size and so on, it still wouldn't go, because I can't replicate that very tiny pinion in there. It's got, I think it's 6 teeth, and it's very fine, and of course it was so badly rusted. Well, that's it from the point of view of getting it going. I suppose we've got to consider it to be a fail, but not from the point of view of cleaning. It's quite an experience. It's the first time I've done a platform escapement, and I've learnt a lot. So, what am I going to do with this? Well, I don't know. Probably just put it back in the bin. It was been on the shelf so long I can't even remember where I got the clock from. But there are some very nice screws on here. Exceptionally good quality. But there's not a lot that can be recycled. The spring in the barrel, that might be all right. You could keep that. That would, if you're into making things out of clockwork, that's quite a good spring, and the gearing is quite good for the first 2 or 3 gears. Anyway, that's it. It'll go in the bin for me. Thanks for watching.